Hey everyone, Jay here. Just want to make sure that everyone has heard about my new on-demand course, the Yoga Modules. It brings together everything I've learned over the last 25 plus years of speaking and studying with the most renowned teachers from around the world. It consists of 36 on-demand video lectures, my home practice video series, and accompanying questions and exercises. There's no set time frame. You get forever access. If you want, there's an opportunity for us to correspond. And if you are a registered teacher, it counts for 30 hours of continuing education credits. But you do not need to be a teacher to benefit from this course. It's perfect for anyone who's looking for an accessible and meaningful way to inquire more deeply into the principles, philosophies, and practice of yoga. It's my new on-demand course, the Yoga Modules. Check it out at jbrownyoga.com. All right, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Welcome, one and all. I hope this moment is finding you in good spirits. And if not, perhaps I can offer you some distraction for a time. I don't know how the world's been feeling to you or how your ship has been sailing. Have you noticed if your compass has been malfunctioning at all? Because mine seems to really not be working as good as it used to. Like, it doesn't seem to be able to distinguish between north, south, east, or west. It's just like spinning. I'm trying to decide which way to steer my ship. My compass is not really giving me much to go on. My only choice really is to just be patient. Is to just trust at some point that compass is going to stop spinning around and I'm going to be able to say, okay, that way. But I don't know when exactly that'll be. And in the meantime, just have to find ways to avoid letting the uncertainty get the best of me. I didn't do bad this week in that regard. Did some things, made some plans for some in-person events coming up. I'll let you know. Also, this weekend, I went to the annual Neighborhood Association party. Well, actually, it hasn't been annual in a long time. The last time the Neighborhood Association had their big annual kickoff party was in 2018, which was before I got to it in 2019. So this is the first one that I've been part of, acting as the vice president and communications director. And it went great. It was fun. Very interesting, though, how now that we've been online for all these years, and I've been here on this show talking about this impulse to get back in the room with people, I forgot that, doing yoga workshops is its own little bubble. People listen to this show or getting a referral by a friend to come and spend some time with me and practice and have discussions. It's like its own little bubble, but just getting together with the people who live in the square mile around you, different story, Just because you get in the room together doesn't mean you're going to connect with them. And there's varying degrees to which people are open to connecting and capable, like have the communication and people skills for it. So it was so interesting to observe. There was the older couples, the ones who've been in the neighborhood for, 30, 40 years. And they remember coming to the annual Neighborhood Association party 10, 15 years ago. And they saw that we brought it back, so they came. And they seemed well seasoned at the art of conversation, very easy to sort of chat it up with them and, feel like you could make a little connection. And then there's I would say my generation, my wife and I, and there was one or two of those couples and we were easy to connect, like the Gen Xers maybe, and definitely felt like bringing kind of a fun vibe to the room, a little bit of a younger energy. And then there was maybe a couple, not a lot of them, but a few like younger couples who are maybe like a generation after us who have also now moved to the neighborhood like recently in like the last couple years. And they seemed less seasoned, but they were there, and it was still great to be in the room with people. And I was comparing it to what my experience has been in looking to make connection with others online. And in the past, as we'll discuss today, the internet was a very different thing. It felt very expansive. It felt like I was connecting to a lot of people. And sometimes these days it just feels like I'm kind of screaming into a void. It's like, is there anybody out there? Anybody out there? And then I'll get like an email and somebody be like, yes, I'm out here. Or, there's like some folks who've been coming to my online yoga classes for years and years. And, there's times where people will come and then they're not coming, and I'll start to just feel like, wow, is there anybody out there? And then all of a sudden, like a group of 7 to 10 people who've been doing these classes with me for, a lot of years, some of them like 5+ years, still showing up after all these years in this like heartfelt, sincere way to do this breathing and moving practice with this like shared intention. It fills me up, and like I feel really like, oh, that's right. There is connection to be found, even in this void of the internet, So I don't know if this means anything to anybody out there, but it does feel like this interesting reacclimation or, new territory of getting back in the room with people again after everything that's happened. And it's interesting because my guest today, Tara Stiles, is someone who's been on the show before. She was here in 2018, and she's someone I only really know from the internet. We've never met in person. We had a conversation back then, if you want to go listen to it, about, the early times of the internet, and frankly, I had like baggage where I think I harbored certain ideas about her. And then I actually talked to her and was like, realizing, oh, she's just like a normal person. Why was I thinking that about her, as has often happened here on the show? Well, recently, I don't want to give it away. We talk about it at the beginning. We ended up coming back together via the internet. Like a ray of humanity came through the internet, and it was Tara Stiles. And we decided it would be fun to have another talk all these years later and compare notes with what's been going on and what we're seeing now. And it was fun. So very happy to have reconnected with Tara, and it's my pleasure to be sharing it with you today. Real quick before we get to that, let me just mention that if you want to connect with me in ways outside of just listening to the show, there's certainly opportunities for us to do it. As I mentioned, I've got ongoing live classes. If you're doing online classes, I've also got on-demand videos. My new on-demand course just came out, the yoga modules. So if you want to connect with me, you can find everything at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, I think that's fine. I will touch base with you on the other side, but let's go ahead and get into it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Tara Stiles. Hello?
All right, just pushing buttons. How are you?
I'm okay. Hi.
How are you? I like your hair.
Thanks. That's this last year. It's been exactly a year since I cut it.
That's awesome.
Cool.
It's good.
Well, listen, I'm already recording, and if it's okay, I want us to consider ourselves having just begun.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I really love that this happened for like a couple of different reasons. In particular, in getting ready to talk to you today, I listened to a couple of your podcasts.
Oh, you're so nice.
And you did one on, what was it? Quiet interneting? which we can talk about. I'd like to talk about our relationship to the internet some today, maybe.
Cool.
But in that particular podcast that you did, you mentioned this early time when you first posted something on YouTube, and then you would meet people in the comment threads where it was like before social media and like the algorithms evolved to what they are today. The internet was really this kind of amazing, expansive place where you could connect with people that didn't live where you lived.
Yeah.
I had that experience too, the early blogosphere days. I remember we were both really active there.
Yeah.
And so, I haven't posted anything on YouTube in, like the better part of 10 years.
Yeah.
And only recently we switched the archives of this show from being like totally behind a paywall to like first half free.
Cool.
And I thought, oh, well, let me put a couple first half free episodes on YouTube, on the off chance that it might turn somebody onto the show who wouldn't have. And you popped up in a YouTube comment thread with the episode that we did back in April 2018. And it just felt like, oh, wow, like it was like a ray of humanity coming through what I have come to sort of view as this like horrible machine that's like serving Satan or something, so it was so lovely that you did that. And then that you like agreed to do this. So thank you so much for making the comment and making this time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. It like brought me back. I mean, I think you were podcasting before anybody that I knew was podcasting. I mean, I talked with you like on my phone, sitting down, like squatting down in the studio, and I'm like, what's a podcast? So yeah, you were doing all this stuff. Yeah, I was doing it in different ways, but yeah, happy to reconnect. That's the whole point. It's supposed to be the point, right? People, connections.
Well, it was lovely to actually like the internet for a moment, because I've just not been liking the internet so much. Although this show has been a way for me to try to like hack it or something, because it's long form and it's unscripted, and I'm putting myself into this improvisatory space. So I can't have a script. Yeah. So all those things are me trying to combat some of the things that have happened. But I really was reflecting back to when we spoke in 2018, and it feels like a totally different lifetime almost. Like,
yeah, I think it was 2011.
Oh, well, no. I mean,
or was it later than that?
I couldn't have been that. We may have had some contact as early as that.
Okay, maybe that was it. Yeah.
And I think we talked about you. The title of the said circa 2011 in it, because you were Rebel Yoga from 2011, I remember.
Okay, yeah.
But I think this show didn't start till 2016. So it was 2018 that you were on the show.
Nice. Okay,
cool. Still, so many years ago.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like the conversation we were having back then, it was based on a context and a set of circumstances that no longer exist.
Yeah. Praise the praisers.
I mean, I guess there is some blessings in that for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm curious to kind of get us started. When I last spoke to you in 2018, if I recall, you did still have like a brick and mortar Strala Yoga location in New York City. And I'm wondering, I don't think that's still there. I don't know. And if not, like, how long did it go before you had to bail?
Well, it's one of those funny things. When I got pregnant with Daisy, I was thinking, okay, I need to change things just for myself. Cause, I think I'm similar to you. Like, I love being with people like every day, leading classes, like that makes me so happy. But I knew having her, like that wasn't going to work, kind of a thing. And I wanted to spend time with her and be with her. So we stopped classes sort of every single day right after she was born. And we just had events and trainings and workshops. And so we just kind of hung on to this space, and she was little. So we were dragging her around the world for events and trainings and all of that too, kind of trying to figure out, okay, what can we do before we have to figure out school? So we got
got that window, right? Before they get to a certain age. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was really fun. And my family got to travel with us too, which was really fun. And then I think it was 2019, when we literally just had the studio at that point, like set up like a living room. So you would have loved to come over. It was like a couch and, we'd have classes, just events and things like that. But we were like, this is ridiculous that we have this giant space and we're paying this rent for like just doing some trainings or whatever. And then a lot of the people that would come for our trainings and events, like New York City would be there once in a lifetime trip. And they would say, we love when you come to Berlin, you come to us, you can be the one that travels instead of 30 of us coming to you. Like, it's okay. They almost told me like, it's okay. You don't have to keep this place open. And then we got lucky. We were in Miami, right in the beginning of when everybody started getting sick. We didn't know it was the pandemic yet. We had just let go of the place like a couple months before.
Oh, so you had already made that decision before the world shut down.
Yeah, we got really lucky.
Oh, wow. That's some grace timing right there.
Oh, I know. Gosh.
And how old is your daughter now? Maybe I would guess 8 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, she's almost 7. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I have a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old. So
wow,
we probably talked about that last time you were here some, and still in the mix. And I guess I am curious to touch base on a few things I was thinking about in relationship to the last conversation we had. I mean, people listening to this might not have heard that conversation. And
they're all retired.
Well, it was just interesting because we talked about you getting flack and stuff because you kind of were a young and up and comer into your adulthood in the yoga world like me. And you did have this other avenue, this modeling stuff and some connections that afforded you some opportunities that not everybody had. And you were, I don't know, in a certain way challenging a certain status quo of what was going on with teachers. And you were saying, do what you feel or something like that. Like that was your whole thing. Like no dogmas. We don't have to follow all these rules that the yoga masters. And that was long before a lot of the things that happened in the yoga world. And I guess I'm curious from your perspective, have you seen from your vantage point a change? Because I feel like I have, but I'm curious if you've seen, it seems to me like things have changed a lot since those early days where we had those teachers who were kind of being dominating in the way that they were. I don't know, maybe you see a different world than I do. Have you seen some changes since back when you were this person who is getting grilled for saying such things that nowadays people take as a given?
Yeah, I mean, I have, thankfully, and it's so cool. Back then, I mean, I was trying to address the blatant abuse, but also like the micro abuses, and then like the really nice people, including myself, who were taught these styles, were just kind of like, okay, now I'm gonna push this person into a position because I'm not abusing them, but it gets trickled down. I was just kind of thinking, there's got to be a better way. And there's so much, we don't need the rigidity. Stress does not equal well-being. Dogma is not healthy for what most of us are going to yoga for. So that was kind of my big like, but now when I tell those stories, some people, especially young people, they look at me and they're like, why wouldn't I do what feels good? And I'm like, it's so cool that younger people, and there's still things that exist out there. I mean, yoga is just so broad, but most people that I meet now, whether they've started yoga with me or with somebody else, there's that feeling and there's that sort of writing on the wall that take care of yourself, listen to your body. These things are now like normalized and they're not always, executed in the right way. And people still have their injuries and their story where their teacher pushed them in a pose or whatever, but those are so much less. And the people that are coming and at least talking to me now that have had the horror stories they're like our age, they went through the same thing and maybe they didn't feel like there was anywhere else to go or nobody to talk to about it. And now they're kind of coming up and saying, well, now I go to yoga and it's all about doing what feels best for your body. It's about listening to yourself. And And yeah, the young people, they've got it going on. I mean, they're stressed about other things, but yoga's their place where they come to listen to themselves. And I'm so happy about that.
Well, I think that's interesting you bring that up. I certainly think that there has been that change, even in my own practice and teaching, of kind of moving from maybe certain ideas about alignment or even certain ideas about strength and flexibility, or like maximizing your physical capabilities or something, to practice being about actually knowing how you feel. And I think that my yoga practice was that because of a particular teacher I had, actually, who I met in India, who actually asked me the question, how do you feel? And I didn't know. Like, I knew all this like Sanskrit chants and all this other stuff that I had been studying. I had no idea how I felt.
Wow.
And that certainly became like an overriding question for me, but I still taught in ways that weren't oriented that way, because that's just not what yoga classes were about so much.
Yeah.
And I guess I have a little bit of a mixed feeling about it, though, especially when you talk about the young people, because on one hand, yes, when I look at my relationship to my own daughter, like, my daughter's not afraid of me in the way that I was afraid of my dad. So I think that she does speak to me in a way that is intimate, in a way that I never had with my dad. And she's even said something about that to me, about like other dads or whatever. And I feel really good about that. But at the same time, like, she's also kind of disrespectful of me in certain ways. And I'm trying to set those boundaries with her. And it seems like the young people don't often have like a lot of discipline, or like the young people, a lot of times these days, they're just like so in a victim mentality or something. And I'm like, I want to like make her walk through the snow, or, you know what I mean? Like, toughen him up or something. So there's something to some of those other types of traditions in yoga that help develop discipline. They weren't all necessarily abusive. Like, where is there a line between like developing discipline that we might need and like being abusive about it? Is kind of what I'm inquiring into. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 100% the approach. I mean, it's sort of like when I first took my first yoga class at dance school or whatever, I was like, yoga's amazing, And then the more I started learning, and I think this is probably happening for a lot of people, but all of the arts like Tai Chi and Shiatsu and Ayurveda, it's like move well, do the things. It's sort of like climb the mountain, like go out in the snow, but do the most you can without causing yourself an emotional panic. But there's still that discipline that, when you move from your center and listen to how you feel, it's not about like, oh, I just don't feel like doing this anymore. It's sort of like, no, like stay with it, see what you can do, with a little bit of a challenge, and see if you can expand that comfort zone. What can you do without completely panicking? And if you get that panic zone, then back off a little bit, but then keep it going. And the more I talk to people that have kind of, and this is what's cool about the internet now, like talking to people that have achieved success in like all these other areas of life, they all kind of say the same thing, like keep going, do what you can do. When you notice yourself, frazzling out or fraying out, back off a little bit, but then keep going. And I found that with yoga through the practice of moving well from alignment, sort of from the inside out, like move your center, move your arms and legs, but you don't need to stress your pinky finger when you're in Warrior Two. You can be there and be in the position, and then tell your mind and also your body to relax while you're still doing the hard thing. So it's not just like all Glennon Doyle, like we can do hard things. It's like we can do hard things and not kill ourselves in the process. So I know what you're talking about with that discipline. It's not just like forget about it, relax, sit on the couch, lazy girl jobs and the Great Resignation, all that stuff. Like I totally get it. They're looking at us and they're like, well, you guys are all burned out, but how do you move really well, achieve, do more, but not destroy yourself in the process? And there is a process for that. That's moving well and taking care of yourself and showing up and doing it for sure.
I hear you. I think for me, it's not necessarily about like doing more, but like doing the right amount.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like, and there's a difference between, challenging yourself because you're trying to reach some abstract ideal that's impossible to get to, whether that's an idea about a body or enlightenment, and challenging yourself in a way that's just like healthy for you to stay stimulated and like engaged in your body and present and stuff. Like there's a certain amount of, again, discipline. And these days the discipline is like, go outside. Like we've gotten to a place where you don't have to go out. So there's a discipline around what would be things that you wouldn't have had to have discipline around at other times in our lives,
Yeah.
And yoga practice is, in my experience, best when utilized in a way to develop the sensitivities and the facilities to be making these kinds of determinations,
Yeah. I still think, and it's funny because I feel like I even got pushback for this, not in a big way, but like, I think it's nice to do yoga every day. And people are like, whoa, whoa,
yoga every damn day, hashtag, right? You're bringing it back, huh?
Bringing it back. But it's like, we have on our Strala app, it's like every day. And people are like, you really doing it every day? Like that's extreme. And I'm like, do you need a rest day from taking care of yourself? No.
Well, you have to define it. Sorry to interrupt you, but when you say yoga every day, that doesn't necessarily mean pushing yourself in asana every day. It just means like doing all the other yoga stuff that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And noticing it in every moment, like you could be sitting here, like we're having conversation and it's like, and you do yoga. So you're comfortable in breathing and relaxed. But I've had so many conversations with people more in like meetings where they're like, sitting upright and they're not allowing themselves to be, it's present. It sounds so corny, when you say it like that, but it's doing what you need to in your body to be here and to be present and feel, because it feels better, like use what you need, rest what you don't, and all the moments. And then if you practice that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes on your yoga mat, you're not going to fall into the traps of, being a little bit not so nice to yourself, whether it's working too hard or working not hard enough and those kind of things that happen to people.
Yeah, I've heard you say that motto of yours, use what you need and rest what you don't. I really like it. To me, that's just like, in a way, that's what I think of as sthira sukha.
Yeah.
That's what yoga practice teaches. It's like the balanced effort, the balancing of the effort and the giving and the receiving,
Yeah.
You mentioned just now, being in these meetings, and it's one of the things that I was thinking about since 2018 that's really seemed to me to be changed. And I don't know if it's just my own vantage point, but I hate, I almost don't want to bring it up because I don't want it to be like at any way it's life. I still have a memory of you driving around New York City in this promotional thing for like a hotel chain where the yoga classes were on the screens in all the hotel rooms. Before there was streaming online yoga everywhere, you had like a deal with whatever it was, some hotel chain. And I'm thinking about the way things are now, and I don't see anybody getting like Nike endorsement deals or cutting those kind of corporate deals anymore. Like, I don't even know if there is the same kind of yoga celebrity that there was back then. And I'm curious if you've seen a change in that, or if maybe just your life shifted because you had a baby and you weren't pursuing it as much. I don't know.
I mean, for myself, I think there was a lot of those things were actually pre-social media. So the only way to work, I would work with brands and we would come up with these like ideas, like, go around New York City, do something, or whether it's more traditional media or on the screens and like how to do it more in the real life. And now there's so much sort of easy things to do with people online. And I met this woman over the pandemic she's a Chinese American woman, and she makes this nail polish that's like cruelty-free, toxic-free, all this stuff. And I just reached out to her because I started buying her stuff online. It's called Sundays to do with Daisy, like at home, because we all had nothing to do. I do yoga and then there's all these other hours of the day. Mm-hmm. And I just, posted some little silly thing on Instagram, and she reached out to me and I said, there's 3 colors that you don't have that I really want. And And like, I don't want this to be a partnership where take a piece of your profits, you're a small business, but I know how to organize those things. So can we take the piece of those profits and then I give that money essentially back to you? And then you buy your own product. And then, so you're buying your own product and then donate it to Dress for Success at your wholesale rate. So then we can kind of like do this thing. And she's like, let me talk to my lawyer and get back to you. And then the lawyer said it was okay. I'm like, let's do that. Let's do something like that. So for me, I'm more interested in, getting creative with partnerships. There isn't these, there's still ambassadors and stuff like that you can do. And, I do some of that here and there, but it's much more, like you said, how you're annoyed with the internet right now. It's much more like influencer based and like, how many posts are you going to do? And like, we want it to look like that. It's just very kind of boring, bringing back the creativity is a lot more fun for me. And I know people inside these organizations really want to do that, or at least in small brands, the founder is usually pretty cool. And if there's something to do together, that's fun. But I hope, the trends keep going in that more creative mindset, because people are getting exhausted and doing these more transactional kind of like, do this for a certain amount of clicks, and then affiliate things is big. I try to stay away from that. It's like, buy this glass of water at my link.
Yes, I know the affiliate, but here's the thing. Affiliate marketing, in my experience, does not work. Like, we even had an experience where there was all these people who were recommending my thing to people. Yeah. And we were like, well, look, they're already doing that. Mm-hmm. Let's give them a thing and then they can get a little cut as well. Yeah. We were like, let's let them. But it was so weird. Once that became part of it, once this like them getting a cut of the money got involved, they weren't recommending it like they were anymore. It was really obvious to me. And I also don't think that the like Instagram influencer thing works the same way that it used to, even though people are still trying to do it. It doesn't do the same thing anymore. I've been thinking a lot that it does have to do a bit with size, like scale, like how big the scale is, and things that are a little bit more smaller and more niche in a way are sometimes doing better. And then the big companies are trying to figure out how to capitalize on that or whatever, right?
It's always the cycle. Like some indie thing makes it cool. Like with Sundays with Amy, I just want to do things in person with people and do events. And I said, for her, she doesn't have a kids thing specifically, but I said, I know a lot of moms now, like a lot of my friends just had kids, and this doesn't need to be like parent and child exclusive, but would you be up for having like a little party? And we can make it like a little press event and people can post online and stuff. But she just had a new location open in the East Village. And I said, let's go there and do like manicures for the little kids, like girls, boys, whatever. They loved it. And one of the moms came up and said, oh, do you rent your place out for birthday parties? I'm like, Amy, there you go. That's a cool, another area of business. So now, that was only like a couple months ago, she called me. She's like, I've got 5 birthday parties next week and it's after hours and it's, we wouldn't be open anyway. And I just think there's so much to do if people use their creativity and ask themselves, like, what do I want to do? And not just like, how can I make money, but how can I do something that's fun, that's enjoyable, that is maybe sustainable financially? There's just so much to do. That's cool, I appreciate like the W's, like getting some stories of things going well for people, because there's so many stories of like, oh, we had to close down, and it certainly has gotten a lot harder. Even, I did, when I let go of my center in 2017, I had 2 years before everything shut down that I was doing the circuit and traveling all around and doing international stuff. And I've been sort of trying to like get back to it a little, but it's harder to do now than back then. It seemed like I was getting all kinds of invitations back then, and now you really do kind of have to make it happen a little bit on your own. But it is possible to do. And to your point, I think there's new purpose behind doing it in a way. Like, it feels even more important to try to do it now that it's harder than it was in 2017 and 2018, Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm sure this is the same with you, but the invitations all get just to like our info box, or like, hey, do you want to come to Barcelona and we have a teepee you can stay in as long as you can get here on your own. We can pay you in products. I'm like, I can't leave my family for that right now. Sorry,
Oh, yeah. Or it's like, we've got a retreat place, but even the retreats aren't, if you've got a group of people who've got enough cash on hand to go to some great location and do one of them, fantastic. Again, like, that's definitely something that's changed for me. Like, I don't have the same judgments around how people are conducting their yoga business.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy for people to get theirs however they can right now, because it's not so easy going,
Yeah.
But I guess I want to make a little bit of a transition with you, because I also noticed something when I was looking through some of your podcasts that really perked my attention, because there's something that's been happening some for me over the last few years where, I don't know, I've been feeling a little bit more emboldened to try to talk about some things that are hard to talk about, even in terms of certain mystical experiences that yoga points to, or questions around a higher power, let's say, And I saw you having some podcasts with people who had near-death experiences. And in particular, another one where you had someone do like a kind of like psychic session with you, where you were connecting to a deceased loved one. And I just thought, whoa, I mean, certainly I think yoga folks have a lot of experiences in the course of spending so much focus and time and attention on breathing and moving and on the experience and the nature of their experience. But we certainly weren't, I don't think we would be having the same conversations we had in the last year or two back in 2018.
No.
We wouldn't have had the guts to risk it, because talking about that kind of stuff can be super polarizing and challenging. So I'm curious, has there been what made you decide to risk having those kinds of conversations on your show now?
Well, I love talking with you about this, because I feel like, it's just so cool. Because we have this long yoga, history. Not a lot of people do anymore. And I felt like back then I was just riding along this. Even people would say about me like, oh, Tara's not spiritual. And I would be like, oh, that's such a weird thing to say. But I wasn't, I know on purpose, I wasn't talking about spirituality because I didn't want to turn anybody off. And I wanted to be like, cheers, like we've got a rabbi, we've got some nuns over there, and everybody feels like this is a safe place. And I liked that. And then I also just felt like, we all have a spirit. We're all spiritual. We don't really need to talk about it, right? We're just like, cool. So I just kind of just did the thing of letting people experience their spirituality without me being the one to lead the conversation. And I was like, that's a good role for me, until I felt like, I felt interested in other things. My dad was sick right during the pandemic. So we went to Illinois, and he was sick before he had Parkinson's. So got to spend a lot of time with him, and he'd always been seeing what I was doing with yoga, and he'd come to the studio and come to stuff. And he's like, oh, I'm proud of you. This is cool. People like to get together. I feel relaxed. But I could tell he was making this sort of spiritual connection, but he also didn't want to talk about it. And we have this kind of similar way about ourselves. But when he was really sick and I would sit there with him and do some shiatsu that I knew, he had this moment where it was kind of like in a meditation where you have this, spiritual or whatever you want to call it experience. And he felt something. And then I felt him feel something. And he was like, what the heck was that? He's like, this is what you do for people. Like, I was proud of you that people like to do yoga with you, but this is like, now I'm experiencing how people feel when they do this. And I'm like, holy shit, like, this is so cool to have this conversation. And, after he passed away, I had more experiences, just like a lot of people do. And I saw myself, going down the rabbit hole of watching all these near-death experience people that have like died and then come back, and I'm like, and they all
you had one on your show. You had one on.
He's amazing. I want to do you would love him. He's so cool. And to me, he felt really normal and somebody that I might, he does yoga. I might have found him anyway. So, and he has this Catholic background. I have this Catholic background. I was like, oh, I have so many things in common with this guy. And so, yeah, I fell in love with everything he said. It all made sense. It all confirmed all the same experiences we have. And he said it in just such a normal way that made me, less afraid to have these conversations with people if I felt like they were, open. And then, it really just opened me up to be able to go out in the world and exist this way and be like, it's fine. If somebody starts talking about this stuff, I'm not going to get nervous. I can breathe and share experiences. And that's a huge part of life too. Why, we don't need to, hide it behind certain religions and all of that. And Peter, his experience was exactly how everybody's experience is with yoga. It's like, there's no white bearded man in the sky. There's no, you can have that in your religion, but the experience is so much more connected and love and beyond. And yeah, I just started getting really fascinated and just letting myself be open a little bit. So,
I mean, I appreciate it so much. On the show this week, in the intro, I was talking about, or it might have been the outro, I was talking about how I have felt in the past and up until now that, I've had a stance of, I don't need to bring these things up like you were saying. Like I've had experiences and I hold certain values or beliefs around those experiences that in certain ways challenge other worldviews, like we do live, and I've been talking this secular materialist, worldview, that sort of predominance. And yoga comes out of like an animistic worldview where you can talk to your ancestors and to mountains and stuff. And so, finding a way to connect with people and not like have someone write you off or push you away. And that's what you were doing a lot. Like people definitely didn't think of you as somebody who was into kind of this idea, this part of the practice, because you were presenting practice in this no dogma, like come as you are way, which I totally get and was very appropriate at the time. But it's interesting how, I don't know, as time's gone on and I've wanted to understand my own experience or like understand what happened with you and your dad there. Like I've just been having people on recently who are people I know who are doing more like what I guess you would call energy healing work. But they talk about it in a way that makes perfect sense to me. It doesn't at all seem out there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have experiences that are just natural to a human existence. But there are a lot of things in the sphere, especially on the internet, that don't give any value to that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I felt inspired to try a little bit more to talk about it, even though it is risky. And I've even gotten myself into trouble using the word God, you get yourself into trouble. But I feel like some, again, purpose around trying to, because I need to talk about it a little, I think.
Yeah. I think that's what happened for me. I mean, our neighbor in Illinois, she's around my age and I would call like an extreme Christian, to the point where she's like making medical choices that I'm like, are you sure? She's pregnant and she's going to an OB that's a Christian. I'm like, but is he, I'm assuming it's a he, because that's like how extreme her religion. I'm like, but is he a medical doctor? Like, just please make sure, like your safety and all that stuff. So we have those kind of conversations, but we've connected around, and she's hardcore Jesus first, reads her Bible, but she feels like crap in her body. So I was just talking to her about all the same stuff we're talking about. And she opened up to me. She's like, you know what? Like, I'm in this Jesus stuff. I'm in this kind of church, but it's not the whole truth. And she's like, when I sit down and I do my prayer, I feel what you're talking about. And I'm looking for that in my life, so I don't know where I'm going to find it. Maybe, she's a leader in her church. She has a women's group. I'm like, maybe you'll just find it by talking about it, talking with other people about it. Like, so I gave her a login to the yoga stuff. She's like, I'm doing the yoga now. So I'm like, look, I'm not trying to pull you out of your church, but it's about, being open to your own clues inside. So it was cool that I could relate with her, because that's someone where I'd normally be like, I'm not going to talk to that person. She's, doesn't believe in climate change or whatever. Like you just write people off.
But you know what? It's so interesting that you give us that example, because I personally have found new resonance with Christians in a way that I haven't in the past, because I recently was like reading the Bible again, and not from I have no connection to Christianity. I was born in like a conservative Jewish household in the 80s in Los Angeles. So I have no connection to Jesus, or I don't have the same. I have like the cultural imprint, like the baggage around all the organized religion, but just like reading the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, and just like trying to for myself inquire what it might mean. Like I would read anything, and I can kind of get some of the stuff when people would say Jesus is a personal savior. I'd be like, what? I don't need some external power authority. But if you were to consider, and as a hypothetical, that Jesus was real and wasn't like just a story that someone wrote, and that, he was put here to have a certain message to people, and his death was a significant thing that I can kind of get it. I can see the statement in a different way that doesn't make me feel like I need to get my back up, but I can relate to my own experience of feeling a need to be held by something bigger than me, and to be able to receive guidance from that in times when I've needed it. Because during the pandemic, frankly, my Christian friend who was telling her daughter that Jesus was going to protect them, they were doing way better because they had some kind of spiritual core like that you could say what you want, whether you think it's a fantasy or not. I had someone on the show talk about the thickening of your cortical walls because of you have prayer and spiritual core in your life. And I do think that yoga has served that for a lot of people. But there definitely was a kind of a secularization. And I had someone, Gary Crafts, I think, said non-sectarian, but not secular. So it doesn't have to, you know what I mean? I do think that yoga is a fundamentally spiritual inquiry.
Yeah.
We shouldn't shy away from it,
Yeah. I mean, it's the coolest thing. I mean, it's not stretching. It's not exercise, but you're using your body to get to your whole self, which is it's the whole thing, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's probably a really good time, if we talk again in another 10 years or whatever, it's probably a really good time healing in a way, or more becoming whole with, owning up to the spiritual part of yoga, but in a normal, not scary way, just within the yoga teachings. It doesn't have to be, maybe compartmentalized in so much. And I remember the reason I rejected it was you would have a teacher that would come in, wouldn't know what they were doing. They'd read a Rumi poem, put it away.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.